Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the PHNX Suns Podcast. I'm Lindsey Smith. That's Saul Bookman. That's Gerald Bourget. And of course, that's Espo. Gentlemen, how was your weekend?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah,
it was good. It was nice to be away for a few days.
I don't remember it, so
Did it go
I guess
too
that's
fast?
good or bad.
Or was it because it was too
All-night
much fun?
Bender or something?
It just
I
went
have
too
no
fast.
family at home. I think I watched some movies. I was just bored. So.
Okay.
So you're happy to be back here with us on a Monday
I
afternoon.
didn't say that.
That's what I heard. All right, guys, we have a very special guest joining us for some of the conversation today. His name is Eric Pincus. He's at Eric Pincus on Twitter. He is a salary cap strategist, a capologist, a writer, and instructor at Sports Biz Class and Bleacher Report. Eric Pincus, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm looking forward to the finals and enjoying life and getting ready for the draft and off season and all that. So excellent. Happy to be here.
Yeah, lots and lots of busy stuff going on these days. The NBA is not shy of any storylines, that's for sure. We appreciate you being here with us. One of the things we did want to talk to you about, of course, is the Suns and kind of all of their options, the new CBA and things of that nature. To start, could you just kind of give us an overall sort of general landscape of where the Suns are and what kind of flexibility they have?
Well, they have some flexibility. I don't want to say that they don't have any. They're not zero, but they're not high on the list of like flexible teams. I mean, you look at, we could talk about the Knicks or the Thunder or the Spurs who have cap room galore and picks. That's not the Suns. They're not in that stratosphere. They gave up the flexibility they had to get Kevin Durant. So where do you go from here? And that's really what they're charged with figuring out. How do you round out a roster that has Devin Booker, Kevin Durant as your primary two guys, and then is DeAndre Ayton a third core piece, or is he the means to an end to add depth? And then there was the news that Chris Paul is leaving the team. They're going to waive him. I don't know if they're going to waive him outright or if they're going to trade him. And that kind of creates a new opportunity. If they trade him, they could bring salary back, and maybe it's unwanted salary from some other team because they're basically getting Chris probably to cut him. So is there something in return? So those are the kind of questions. They don't have a lot to offer. You've got, Campaign, Landry Shamet are youngish guys that they have. I don't think they're necessarily key prospects that other teams are going to send great players for. And if you're only limited to, if you're limited to Chris and Ayton, and if you don't trade Ayton, that flexibility goes it gets very slim very quickly.
A lot of questions about the new CBA and how this is the construct of it and how it's going to limit some teams. To be frank, the day we got our new owner, we were all excited because we finally had an owner that was going to spend a lot of money. And then it seems like the next day the NBA was like, not so fast. What can you tell us about the new CBA that you already know about in terms of limitations that teams are going to have and how that could play a part in what the Suns are trying to do?
Right. So where the Suns were situated at the deadline after getting KD and pre-CBA, pre-new rules, they were already sort of boxed in. They already went for it with what was their all-in move to get KD. So they were limited by the flexibility. Now, you can argue that the increased limitations are why they're getting out of Chris Paul, but I don't think that's accurate. I just think Chris is at a point where really when I think they signed the deal, I think this was under Sarver, that was probably the plan, was that they would get the most out of him until this third year. And then he's got such a flexible deal that they would probably trade him or maybe now they're cutting him instead of trading him. Maybe that's the response to the new rules. Generally speaking, as a team, you don't want to be above what they have a new second apron. So just rough terms, teams are limited in that upper apron. Let me give you the numbers. So in theory, we don't know the exact numbers, but in theory, the tax will be 162. Mm-hmm. The apron is about 169. And then the second apron is about 180, a little bit under. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the areas of flexibility. You have some limits on your flexibility if you're above the tax. You have more limitations above that first apron, and then you have like these extreme punishments above the second apron. And the punishments increase over time. So they're like not terrible this year, but over time. So if you're keeping all of this together, you're keeping Chris long-term, DeAndre, Booker, KD, now you start to run into that issue. So this is where the Suns need to sort of pivot. But at the same time, I don't know that these new rules are really changing their situation. They were already no picks, no young players that other teams really covet, and a very top-heavy roster. And outside of Ayton, who is a young player, who there are teams that do covet, you just have to decide, is there enough return if they're going to move him? So that's the debate.
Real quick before we move on to the next question, in regards to that, do teams have a heads up as to what the construct of the CBA is going to be prior? Because, I mean, in the Suns case, you know, they gave up a lot of draft capital, two valuable players that were very young to get Kevin Durant. I assume that they got a heads up, and if not, I mean, I feel like this is kind of a big deal because they gave up a lot of capital to get one player, and I wonder if in hindsight they wouldn't have made that deal with the limitations that they had.
Yeah, they still would have.
Okay.
Like, I feel like, did they have an idea? Probably not really. I don't think that most teams fully understood where things would go because it was unknown, right? Like, it was a negotiation. I think if you read the tea leaves, you knew that the NBA wanted a hard cap. And you also knew that the players wouldn't accept a hard cap. So this is sort of as close to that as we could get to without like a lockout. You know, we got labor peace. Basketball is going to continue. There's greater penalties for the big spenders. I don't think this is where I think this is where the Suns have been going for a long period of time. They had Chris. They needed to replace Chris. And I think they were looking to move Chris even at the deadline. And then KD came up, and like that prospect of adding a top, depending on your point of view, top 5 player in the league. I mean, we could debate where he is now with Jokic ascending, and I guess Embiid's MVP, and, you know, like, where does KD fit on that? I don't know, but he's in that conversation. And for the Suns to be able to add that to a top scorer, you could like or dislike Booker, but he's among the top scorers in the league, period, every year. So I don't think they changed their approach. I don't think that this is, quote, you know, unfair specifically to the Suns. They probably disagree because any team that has a high payroll probably doesn't like it and says that we're targeted. But I really think the targets were the Clippers and the Warriors. The Suns just went into the tax just recently. Like, they've been avoiding the tax forever. So, yet, like you said, you finally have an owner willing to get there. They don't have to avoid the tax. They can keep spending, but that limitation in getting KD was inherent, and I think they do it again, regardless of what the rules are.
Are we 100% sure that the second apron kicks in July? I know there's some certain rules will happen and certain won't.
Right. Well, it all kicks in July 1st, okay. But there are gradual limitations. So, for instance, you know, there's things like you have a taxpayer mid-level, which is it's been lowered, but let's say it's $5 million. If you're above that second apron, you don't have it, right? So that's immediate. Whereas later there are issues like frozen draft picks, which are crazy, where like 7 years down the road, your pick's frozen. You can't trade it. It'll drop to the end of the first, and there's a way out of it, but you have to get out of it like almost right away. It's not even almost. You have to get out of it right away, like the next year or so. Whereas, you know, like there are other, like there's a repeater tax that it previously exists, and it's based on the most recent years, whereas this frozen pick is on like the front stuff. So like you do it now, and the next year you stay, and the next year you're just frozen, period. And your pick, let's say that you're rebuilding in 6-7 years, KD and the Suns win a title, you know, they celebrate, they've got their championship. But now it's 7 years later and they're rebuilding and they're the worst team in the league, which is, you know, kind of what happens is, you know, the rise and fall. And now you get the number 1 pick and Victor Wembanyama is in the draft and you get the number 1 pick and it's frozen. So you don't even have that chance. So now you're 26 or 30 or some nonsense like that. So there are restrictions that, you know, about trades and how it's limiting. There's issues about like, you know, buyouts, whether you can get a buyout player. I mean, we could do like, probably a week's worth of content, just on like the minutia of that. And that's what I spend my time doing. I don't think your viewers want us to get that deep into it, other than to say that like the Suns, like everybody else, are restricted, and there's no team that isn't restricted by this. So the Hawks are in a difficult situation because they're heavily invested. The Pelicans today are fine, but 2 years down the road, they can't keep this team together. If you have a team that's drafted really well, like you look at the Thunder, they've got Shea, they've got Giddey. If Holmgren comes and has a great second year, he missed his first year, and now 3 years down the road, they got to pay more. You could see how any team could walk a path to they're screwed. You know what I mean? And it's the goal is if there's only there's 30ish, there's 12 all-stars, right? But then you have injuries, so injury replacements. So let's say you get to 30 all-stars a year. Those should be spread out so that every team has an all-star level talent. And you could say, well, some teams are going to be rebuilding, so maybe 5 are rebuilding, so 2 teams have 5 of those guys. That's the idea of how the NBA wants to operate. And it's not perfect. And the Suns, they have 2 of those guys, right? You have Booker and KD, and then we could debate what Ayton is. So you celebrate that if you're a Suns fan, but now the hard part is, fleshing it out. And they, losing to the Nuggets, if they win a title, may not reflect on who the Suns. We don't really know how good the Suns are or how bad. Like, oh, they got knocked out early in the playoffs. Yeah, but they got knocked out by the team that rolled through the rest of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard. It's every decision that a front office, Suns included, have to make is based on, you don't have full information. You just make the best choice that you can. But to add KD and Booker together, I think you're already ahead of most of the other teams.
Yeah, Eric, if they win a title, they can freeze every asset.
Exactly.
Eric, you kind of alluded to this, how we were always sort of heading this way with Chris Paul. When they signed the contract, they left themselves some flexibility with only $15.8 million guaranteed this year. Next year is fully non-guaranteed. Out of those 3 options in terms of waiving and stretching and trading him, I mean, what's kind of your read on which avenue the Suns should be taking, ideally, if they can?
Right. So, the should is, obviously subjective in that, like, I'm not on the Suns' phone calls to know who's being offered. If you're being offered terrible trade packages for Chris Paul, and you're just being offered like guys you don't want and you don't think helps and just puts you into greater financial jeopardy, then the answer is no. Like, in a perfect world, they should trade Chris and get back 2-3 guys who can help them win now. And they don't really have picks, but maybe you're taking an example would be John Collins. I don't know if he's great at anything. He's solid across the board. He's a good player. He's earning about $25 million a year, which is probably higher than his production. So if you're the Suns, do you say, well, we could probably get John Collins and maybe, 1 or 2 other considerations from the Hawks for Chris Paul? And the reason why the Suns do that is that they can then stretch Chris Paul, and suddenly they go from like at the second apron to under the tax, saves their owner a ton of money, gives the team more flexibility, and they don't necessarily need John Collins, and they can afford to, they can consolidate. I think that's consolidate their talent, whereas the Suns don't have any players to consolidate. They barely have anyone on the roster. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think you're getting a Kongwu, but maybe a Sadiq Bey or a Jalen Johnson, or, you go down the list, and that's where you're relying on your scouting department in Phoenix to say, oh, this guy Vit Krejci, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. He's a diamond in the rough. He'll be like the next Christian Brown on the Nuggets, and he's on a minimum, and we get John Collins, but we're actually doing it because I'm just making stuff up. You know what I'm saying? That's the approach of how it should go down. But if there's, if they look at John Collins and say he does nothing for a team we're paying $25 million a year, he's just tying up our flexibility, we're better off stretching Chris, getting out of that. Now, if you stretch him, you're getting about $12 million worth of the mid-level exception to spend. So it's either Chris plus $12 million. Now, maybe you can also get the biannual. Maybe that's about, $4-ish million, something like that. We'll call it 5. Well, it's under 5, but we'll call it 5. So let's say you can get 2 players at 12 and 5 for stretching Chris, but you can't bring Chris back. Or you can waive Chris and then pay $5 million to get one guy. So you're paying Chris the minimum, perhaps. You don't stretch him. You waive him, bring him back at the minimum, pay a $5 million guy. And that's assuming Chris will come back at the minimum, which I'm not sure he would. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of weighing. But by the way, that plan also means tons of tax, limited flexibility. And so, the should is probably in order: trade Chris, stretch Chris, waive Chris. And I probably have waive Chris low on the list because I don't think he that's waive without stretching. I don't think he's coming back for the minimum. That's my opinion. And I feel like it's relatively well sourced, but at the same time, it's hard to say what people actually do versus what the buzz is in NBA circles.
So Joe in the chat had a quick follow-up to that. If the Suns trade Chris Paul and then that team subsequently cuts him before that June 28th deadline, can he then re-sign in Phoenix? Is there no restriction to that?
I'd have to look at that closely. My understanding is it would be a year.
Okay.
I have to double check that because there are some loopholes because we're between seasons. I think the rule is, without reading, that, so for one, if they stretch him, they can't re-sign him. If they trade him and he's then cut immediately, I believe they're limited for a full year. So it would probably be, July of 2024 for that till they can sign him. That's without looking it up, that's my interpretation.
Sure. Perfect. You had the report late last week in regards to Karl Anthony Towns and the belief that he won't be on the Wolves roster come next season. Do you see any path? Because Suns fans tend to be obsessed with him because he's friends with Devin Booker. Is there any logical path to wind up having Karl Anthony Towns in Phoenix?
Sure. Well, the article was tying the Minnesota situation to what other executives around the league are saying about the Wolves. Now, there are also teams that are having conversations with the Wolves, so they have an understanding of what the conversations are. And so some of them, the thrust of what I wrote was that he's probably not going to be on the team for 24-25, and that some people think he could be gone as early as before the season, so in the next few weeks around the draft, and that there is some conversation right now, and I believe there to be conversation where the Wolves are talking to teams about Cat. So I don't want to sit here and say he won't be on the team. He'll be traded next week. I don't know that to be true. I do know that he's at least a consideration for teams, and especially with that number 3 pick, or we could debate all that. The challenge for the Suns is Cat makes a ton of money, so yes, certainly possible. He's in the $41 million price range, ramping up to about 40. I'm sorry, that's Gobert. He's in the $36 million price range, but that jumps up after a year because he's been extended to 49. So it's a commit. And yes, the Suns could go after him, but understanding that if you're paying him 50, if you're paying KD 50, 51, whatever, and you're paying Booker 50, let's just round it to 150 for all three. That's a hefty burden for a team to take on under the new rules. And if you go back to like the LeBron teams, it was like LeBron and Wade or LeBron and Kyrie, and that third guy was Bosh or Love. The reason why Bosh worked so well is because of what he did to complement the scorers as a defender, as a role player, as like an elite role player, high paid, etc. I don't know that Cat is that. So from a basketball point of view, not really a fan. But also to keep that in mind, like the second apron projects to be about 188 next year. So if you're putting 150 into 3 players, you're probably well over that. So then the Suns get into crazy territory and now you're starting to talk about a year where frozen draft picks happen, etc. And you're if as far as, okay, fine, I'm wrong. Cat is the guy. They want to do Cat, Booker, KD, and that's the heart of what they want to do. Well, then how do you get there? And you could probably get there via something built around Chris. You would have to probably guarantee most of his money, and there has to be a compelling reason why the Wolves do that, of which the Suns don't really have any. And then you say, well, maybe the Hawks, as they're trading DeJounte. And now you can get into like, okay, well, fine. Now the Wolves need a point guard. They get DeJounte Murray. The Suns the Hawks get Chris Paul and whatever. Maybe they get out of John Collins, whatever. And then, so like there are ways to make it work, but we start to stretch a little bit the credibility of it. It's certainly possible. Now, of course, if you moved Ayton, now you open up a whole different world of possibilities. And if you're thinking like, oh, no, you're going to trade Chris and keep Ayton. Well, now you're at like 180 with just the four of them, which is at that second apron or thereabouts. And so, yeah, I mean, practically speaking, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it likely? I put that probably, low on the likely list, but I try not to be judgmental when people ask me like, is it legal? Is it possible? Sure. Yeah,
Eric,
of course.
it's all right to be judgmental. We judge the fans that ask us that as well. So.
Fair enough.
All right, Eric, the last thing I want to ask you about is just, if you were in charge of the Suns, because they have some maneuvering they have to do this offseason without going into like specifics maybe on exactly the player and things of that nature. But if you were the Suns.
Details. I want a thorough, comprehensive list of what the Suns.
Sure.
What would you do this offseason? Obviously,
Right.
when it comes to Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, and so on and so forth.
Right. I mean, I believe there are 3 contracts that stand out as like, get out of jail free cards when it comes to other teams saving money. It's like Kevin Porter Jr. with Houston, Jonathan Isaac with Orlando, and Chris Paul. Those are the 3 top money savers right off the bat. Now, there are teams that have cap room that can do similarly. I'd be hitting up all of those teams that I'm looking at and saying, yeah, they need to shed money. I'd start with the Hawks. I'd be trying to see, what's out there from them for Chris Paul. And then how do you facilitate a move where you're getting, to me, I'm not hung up on the names, like the star names. Like you have all the scoring you would possibly need from a star point of view with KD and Booker. So now it's who can get them the ball to where they're most effective. How do you defend with this group? How do you need shooters, athletes, defenders. You need guys more like Bruce Brown Jr. than you need like Kevin Porter Jr. or Michael Porter Jr. You know what I mean? Like Michael Porter Jr. is like a good complementary third scorer with a giant contract. Like Bruce Brown is relatively cheap. He'll get paid more this summer. So I don't know if I'd have to sit and really think like who is available. I would start with the Hawks because of their money trouble. I would go team by team. Like Brooklyn is in a situation where I think they have to cut money. So I'd be looking at like Royce O'Neal types. Like, is that, quote, sexy? Is it like, I don't know, but like, you want to build a team that can actually win. Like what happened with the Nuggets to win was they got like KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's another guy who it's like, is he a star? Is he ever going to be, headlining the All-NBA list? Of course not. But he helped the Lakers win a title. He got traded to Washington and didn't do much there because the team was lousy. So those are the kind of guys you want to find. And, Royce O'Neal, if you can get Dorian Finney-Smith, I think they're going to want more. But like even Joe Harris, like I don't love Joe Harris, but he's a good shooter. He's expensive. And now maybe you're getting Royce O'Neal and Joe Harris for really cheap. Just sending Chris because they can get out of money and it saves them a situation. And you're getting, so we could spend a few hours getting to the should, but that's the idea of it. You know what I mean? The bigger question is, should you trade Ayton? And that is a tougher one. I think they could get 2-3 guys back for him. They need players who can play right now and help them win. The thing is that Frank Vogel, the new coach, historically likes Ayton types. Like he got so much out of Roy Hibbert back in the day, and Ayton is better, than Roy Hibbert ever was. And I like Roy. I got to know him pretty well with the Lakers when he was there for a year. So not, belittling him, but I'm saying Ayton is, really better than I think what he's been the last year or two under Monty. I think we saw what he can be in that playoff run to the finals. I thought, he was fantastic. I mean, he was going up against elite bigs like AD and other guys. and holding his own. So that I think is the heart of, the matter. What can you get for Chris, or do you just let him go? And then what do you get for $12 million? Is that what I think they should do? No, I think they should try to get something for Chris. And the harder question is there a viable return that really makes sense for Deandre Ayton, which is not an easy question to answer.
Yeah. Eric, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and all the insight you were able to share with us today. Thank you again.
Of course. Thanks for having me anytime.
We'll see you next
Thanks,
time. And everybody, make sure you give him a follow on Twitter at Eric Pincus. And also make sure you sign up for the BetMGM Sportsbook app. It is a lot of fun. If you have not signed up, make sure you are using that bonus code PHNX, because there's a few different offers depending on where you live when you use that bonus code. But for our Arizona audience, you will get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use that code PHNX. You can check out the show notes for full details. And now you can listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
And of course, don't forget to check out our friends over at OG's. They have fantastic products. They are even more fantastic people over there as well. You know, we love our friends over at OG's and all the amazing things that they create. They have the Aquaberry Sleep Edition gummy. They have the Strawberries and Cream Happy Balance gummy. They now have mixed bags, so you get all the creams and all the fruit flavors in one bag. So whether you're craving blackberries and cream one day or red apple the next day, there you go. You got a mixed bag full of delightful gummies. And of course, as a reminder, Pink Lemonade drops on June 21st, so keep an eye out for that. You can check out OG's online at ogsbrands.com, on Instagram at ogsbrands, and you can also find their products at your local dispensary, but you must be 21 years or older to purchase. Guys, that was a really interesting conversation with Eric. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we kind of got a little bit of clarity on, especially around the CBA, because there's so much that's changing.
Yeah, no, that was huge. Very informative. Thanks to Eric for coming on. And I think it kind of reiterates what we've been struggling with, all of us, when it comes to trying to figure out what the Suns should do this offseason. Is there is no like perfect answer that's waiting there. Like last summer, it was like Kevin Durant is dangling in front of us. Like we're fixated on that. That makes sense. This summer, there are so many different avenues that they can take, and none of them are easy. They're all complicated. They all involve asking tough questions. Like a lot of this stuff that we're talking about with Chris Paul, when he was talking about, you know, guys that you want to bring in, guards that can facilitate and help them run the offense and whatnot. I'm thinking like, well, shit, like that's Chris Paul. And if you look at the free agency point guard list, it's not great. So unless you are able to find a trade that brings in those 2 to 3 guys at different positions of need and really nail those trades, it's hard to figure this stuff out, and it's going to be hard to put the right pieces around them in one offseason.
First off, screw Kevin Durant for making me have to care about math. Let me make that very clear, because I have not talked or thought about math this much since high school. But Eric got me a little excited.
Okay.
He was talking nerdy to me. I got a little fired up with the idea of you could actually get something for Chris Paul. Because I thought this was basically you're not going to find a trade partner when it comes to Chris Paul, and you're down to waive or waive and stretch, right? I thought that's really what we were looking at. But if Atlanta's interested in that, just to turn around and waive Chris Paul, I'd be interested in John Collins. The Suns were reportedly interested in at the deadline last year. Like if you can get a piece or two that can actually have a positive impact on this club, I'm listening, because just waving and stretching him doesn't add enough to me, you know, with those exceptions, that it's going to change the fortunes of the Suns necessarily. But if you can get a guy that has talent that just doesn't currently fit where he's at, now you got me interested.
Yeah, you know, my biggest takeaway from that whole interview was that Chris Paul is the piece to be moved. Like, he didn't really make it sound like DA would be the ideal piece, at least from his perspective, to move. And now, does he watch the Suns 24/7 like us? Probably not. A lot of people have their own feelings about DA, but I do feel like you're kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with DA at this point, where you just got to hope and pray that he's the guy that's going to be able to turn it around and help this franchise get to another level, because the maneuverability, mainly because of his lack of performance this last season, hinders his trade prospects out there. And we've already seen a team say that they're not interested, and we'll get to that later. So I feel like, Chris Paul obviously is the one that needs to be moved, and you got to hope that you can get enough back for him, because this team needs depth, and they need it in the worst way. And the point guard,
See, I think that lends itself to, I don't know that trading Chris Paul is going to be enough if you're looking to round out this team. I feel like, if anything, like, Chris is the most expendable one of the two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ayton is the one that's actually going to get you stuff in return. I still feel like, honestly, both you've got to, obviously we know this, they've got to explore trades for both guys and see what they can get. But I feel like if you're looking for meaningful upgrades, Chris will get you a guy or two from a team that maybe wants to take his contract and stretch and waive it, and get that salary cap relief. But I feel like DA is still the one that's actually going to get you assets, because he still is only 24. He's on a max, but it's not going to be as terrible for some teams as the TV deal comes in, and smooths that out a little bit. And I feel like he'll still have those suitors that are like, we can fix him, or he was just in the wrong scenario. Give him a change of scenery, he'll be great. I feel like you've got to explore trades for both those guys.
Yeah, I still think I think the only path to build a true contender around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker is to move DeAndre Ayton and CP3, based on how boxed in you are right now with things. The fact that not only do you need to fill out the remainder of your starting lineup, but you need bench depth. We saw how that screwed them. I think the only way to get there is to move both those guys and get as much value as possible to kind of fill things out. You move CP3 for something like a John Collins and spare parts from Atlanta. Then you move DA for something involving a point guard and bench pieces, whatever the case may be. To me, that seems like the only path to really build around your two stars and get you to where you want to be.
Okay, so I'm not going to make us talk about this for a really long time. We can save that for a little bit later. But Suns and 8 in the comments said, we don't need to look for another point guard. We already have one, and his name is Devin Booker. This has been a conversation since the Chris Paul news kind of hit the social waves, is that could you turn to Devin Booker and have him handle the ball more? Not in the sense of like point book that we saw in the past, but really have him kind of more in that role on a regular basis. I don't know that I love that for Book. I do think he's capable of doing it 100%. But that's such a heavy load, I feel like, to put on Devin's shoulders. And like you said last week, Gerald, then you miss out on the efficient offense that he brings. And you're asking somebody else to replace that offense to an extent when it's like, he's so efficient that why would you trade one for the other?
You want to answer that, or you want me to answer that? I'm going to push back on this whole, like, I don't give a shit if Chris Paul's the point guard. We saw that this year. Like, the Suns could manage, when everybody was healthy, the Suns could manage being out there without Chris Paul, or even with him on the court, and not have Chris Paul be a dominant ball handler for the Suns, right? Devin Booker showed in the playoffs, especially against the Nuggets in games 3 and 4, that he could be every bit the facilitator that you need without having to dominate the ball the entire time, because Kevin Durant can bring the ball up. Different guys can bring the ball up. To me, it's not about running the offense. It's more about, if you're having to bring the ball up every single time, because teams try to wear you down, they throw guys at you, they try to throw doubles, and Devin has evolved. But because you have other ball handlers on the court, the weight of that is not as significant as it once was, like when Devin Booker was point guard in year 3 and 4. Like, that was a heavy weight because he was the only fucking guy that could do anything out there. So it's a big difference between then and now. So I don't really buy this. Now, the only thing I will say is that Chris Paul in the fourth quarter specifically will get you in the right place at the right time, set you up for success to make sure everybody's organized as they try to execute the offense, right? Devin Booker can do that to a certain degree, but Chris Paul's one of the best of all time to do it. It's not really a fair comparison. But Devin Booker's playmaking ability is so vastly superior to Chris Paul right now in his career that he can score, he can dish, he can do a variety of different things. He makes him a little bit more dangerous than Chris Paul just organizing the offense. So I just feel like at this point, if you just find ball handlers and guys that can take that weight off of Devin until you get into your half court set and then maybe make Devin the primary focus, cool. But I don't think it's a necessity.
Well, I mean, if we're to believe that Kevin Young had an influence on last year's offense, some of what we saw with not having Chris Paul bring up the ball could have been aspects of what he did there. And to your point, there's a lot of, I mean, Kevin Durant can do some of the ball handling at certain points. Devin can. You sign a guy like a Dennis Schroeder to some kind of veteran minimum, you could have him out there, handle the ball a little bit, play good defense. Like, I don't think you need to get the star point guard. You don't need the big name there necessarily because you do have a lot of guys. But when you go from Chris Paul to point guard by committee, I think you're going to notice it at certain points, even if Devin Booker is leading that committee.
You will, and you'll notice it like we noticed it, and maybe not to this extent, but you'll notice in game 2 when they were finding their groove, when they built that 9-point lead on the Nuggets, and then Chris Paul gets hurt, the offense kind of falls into disarray a little bit. And not to say that every team is going to play defense the way that the Nuggets have in these playoffs. They've been great, but like it will matter. I think Book is good enough to handle more playmaking in the half court. Like Saul said, they would need to disperse who's bringing the ball up the court. That's one way you can make Point Book a little bit more viable, but come playoff time, that is a lot to put on his plate if he's having to, handle a lot of the facilitation. And that will be a key difference. I think a lot of people have, labeled Chris Paul as being washed, and, his availability is a big question. We all know that. But when you do have him out there, it makes a difference. And when you look at the point guard market, it's not great in free agency. So if you waive and stretch him and you free up, that MLE for $12.2 million, and you free up the biannual exception for like $4.5 million, whatever it is, you have to nail those signings that you put those to use on. And I just don't know, like you're looking at a home run swing type signing with like a Gabe Vincent or somebody like that. I don't know that that's the answer. I don't know that that's better than trying to waive Chris Paul and re-sign him on a vet minimum.
But it's starting to sound like that might be a pipe dream, because the tea leaves, what you're hearing from some of the national guys, Eric even mentioned it there, is that they don't think he's going to sign that vet minimum to come back. I don't know if that's leverage right now, but
it could be. But Woj did say he wants to be back with the Suns, and I would put a decent amount of stock in that. I don't picture him wanting to go anywhere else unless he's taken that hit to his pride that deeply if they did waive him, which is a possibility.
I mean, there is a very real situation where, he wants to be with the Suns, but for a certain dollar amount, and what you're offering is not that dollar amount. You know what I mean? It could be like, I do want to be back here, but I'm not going to take a pay cut to be back here.
But that's the thing is like, if the Suns decide to waive him and they re-sign him for the vet minimum, that's $3 million on top of the basically 16 he's already guaranteed. Is another team going to come through with an offer for 19, 20 million a year? I don't see that either.
Maybe not that much, but maybe it's their biannual exception or something. And if the only team I see him seriously considering is the Lakers, if LeBron calls him up and says, I think we can get something going here, and we've got a little bit more money than Phoenix, I could see that where he goes.
But he can't double dip. Remember, like we talked about last week.
Yeah, there's like an offset.
There's an offset in his contract, so he can't like stack their mid-level on top of the 16.
So he'd lose them. So basically, I could see where LeBron could pull him into LA.
LeBron's the only person I feel like that could pull him in. I think to me it would be between the Lakers and the Suns, because the Clippers are a joke. They've always been a joke. They always will be a joke. Bye. So I would keep it at the Lakers.
Aggressive.
Yeah.
I do think the overarching theme that we're getting from these conversations is like people expecting a home run fireworks kind of off season. You're just not going to get that. And I don't think even getting a third star is the right avenue to team building. Cause like we keep talking about, you have 3 guys that are making 30 to 40 million a year. Good luck building the rest of your roster.
You just need, I mean, honestly, like the Nuggets, okay? You're looking at them right now. They made 2 key moves in the offseason. Brown and KCP. And those 2 guys is enough for them to be threats enough and come through enough from the perimeter and scoring wise and defensively to get them over the top. You just need to be marginally better than you were last season on the bench and in your role players. Guys were far too inconsistent. They were far too below average in helping out KD and Booker when they had their opportunities, and they didn't come through. You need guys that were going to step up like Shamba did in the one game that he actually had good as a Sun in that.
Stop.
Aggressive.
In the playoffs this year.
Sorry.
Stop it.
In the playoffs this year. And you need more consistent stuff like that. We thought we were going to get that from Torrey Craig. And if Torrey kept on that role, I do believe at a certain point that would have been almost enough to overcome the Nuggets in addition to Chris Paul not getting hurt. But he fell off. And then you had guys that were just up and down and up and down. I felt like it was on a roller coaster. Yeah, Kogi, man, he had a great January. We started calling him a knockdown 3-point shooter, and he didn't hit a 3 for the rest of the season. I don't know what happened to my guy.
Lindsey happened to him. That's what happened.
You two happened to him.
Oh.
When Gerald and I were referring to him as a knockdown 3-point shooter, he was fine. The minute the two of you jumped on the bandwagon is when he fell off.
Well, then don't clamor for us to get on the bandwagon if you don't really want us on the wagon.
Well, now I know better. I don't want you anywhere near the bandwagon.
Your comment made her go full Sopranos.
Hey, gobbledygook. Hey. Oh. Well, look, I think what Suns fans need to do with this offseason is have some lowered expectations, right? I mean, that's
honestly for real though.
Expectations.
Like, give me.
Oh, we have the sound.
We do somewhere.
You guys just sing the sound.
So play it.
No, it's too late now.
It's too late. The moment's past.
It's gone.
But seriously, give me some lesser names, but more value. Like you need to hit, to mix my sports metaphors, a lot of singles this offseason. Really, guys that are good, that can fill your bench, that can play these roles, and not the way that some teams have tried to build where it's all stars. If you go out and get Karl Anthony Towns and you have $150 million between Devin, KD, and Karl Anthony Towns, enjoy being stuck in the middle.
Yeah, that would be rough.
All right. I'm gonna give you guys an option here.
Okay.
We got, for what our normal shows total runtime, usually about an hour, means we got about 15 minutes left. Should we just roll through everything we have planned, or do we want to push some for tomorrow?
No, roll through it. Let's do this.
All right. We will roll through it. We're going to start with a super chat first. And Saul, because it is from Basketball Cthulhu, you are up. Thank you, Psycho Blue, for your $10 super chat.
Basketball Cthulhu is getting aggravated at Maga Porter Jr. throwing all of this shade. Our vengeance shall be fearsome and terrible as we snatch the title belt off his conspiracy theorist waist.
Oh.
Okay. First of all,
I'm dying.
I just want to take a moment to say that we continuously are nothing but in Denver Nuggets fans' heads all the damn time.
Yes.
Even the players.
Yeah.
They are about to hoist their first championship, and they beat us to the punch. You can't say anything about it. It is what it is. And still, they are obsessed with us. Obsessed. Oh my God, that is the most fickle fan base in the world. All they do is they search hate on the internet. They want to find everybody with a take about the Nuggets just so they can shit all over them, despite the fact that their team's about to win a championship. They can win the championship tonight, and I guarantee you within 5 minutes, All the old takes exposed will be out there. All the bad takes will be retweeted. Look at this clown and look at this.
Saul's just worried that's coming.
No, I've been saying it. I've been saying it because when they beat us finally, that's all they did. When they see the Lakers, that's all they did. They're up on the Heat. That's all they're doing. Dude, just enjoy the fucking championship. You fucking weirdos.
We gave it to them so good that they can't get enough.
My goodness.
Listen.
Okay, I'm just going to say, because as soon as the Suns win a title, I know that
We'll
our
do the
fan base
same
and even
shit.
people on this panel are going to do the same shit and drugging up receipts.
The
Michael
bookmark
Porter
tab was
Jr.
the worst and best thing for Twitter, okay? We all know it.
Michael Porter Jr., I'm not a huge fan of his, but all that he said was that I think they'll put up a better fight than the Suns did. And what have we all been saying about their effort in Game 6 when they were down by 30? They sucked. They didn't have fight. They quit. All this shit. Like, what is he saying that's different than what we were saying? Is it just because he's saying it?
Mm-hmm. It's because he's saying it while he's playing against the Heat and not the Suns.
Well, it's also he's saying it as they're about to win a series 4-1 and win their first title. Who cares?
Also, I'm going to say something here, and it's not going to be
Yeah, but
popular.
it's still a part of their journey, though. They do expect a more competitive game than the one they got from the Suns to close it out. That's fair. I would expect that too.
I'm just saying, we're in their head.
sucked.
Let me say this, and I'm going to piss off some people, but screw Basketball Cthulhu. All Basketball Cthulhu has talked about is how great we're going to be, this and that. Where is it? Where is it, Basketball Cthulhu?
Well,
all right.
Yeah, that seal ain't been broken, and I'm waiting.
I will say this about, listen, we love you, Psycho Blue. We do. But Basketball Cthulhu, I don't know. Is there a basketball god? Because we sure are getting the shit end of the stick every single year. Meanwhile, franchises like the Nuggets somehow thrive. They do the same shit we do. How come everybody else gets rewarded and we don't?
Because
we all have different gods? What the heck?
Patience.
Oh.
Patience.
Patience.
Sometimes you gotta go through hell to
58 years of patience.
I love Jay, too far, Espo. And Charles, Esperado strikes again.
Yeah. You just have to be better in your faith, Saul.
You got to have faith, the faith.
That's why. You got to be a better follower. A better disciple.
What the hell are we
Pray
talking
harder.
about?
Just move on. Just move on.
Baby.
All right, let me tell you about our friends.
That's all we're saying.
Let me tell you about our friends over at FOCO. FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and so much more. FOCO always has our back for Arizona sports, and they have yours too. You can get the best gear around by visiting FOCO.com and using code PHNX. For all non-presale items, use that code PHNX for 10% off. Again, that is FOCO.com, code PHNX. Also want to remind you that our friends over at Four Peaks are doing some really cool things for teachers. This year, they are giving away 11 $1,000 cash grants, and one lucky teacher will win a Teacher's Lounge renovation provided by Four Peaks. If you want to nominate a teacher, go to fourpeaks4teachers.org. You do have to nominate before June 30th, so make sure you get that in. And also, Teacher Tuesdays are back. So tomorrow, for all you teachers out there, if you go down to the 8th Street Pub in Tempe, every Tuesday through July, you bring a valid teacher ID and you'll receive $4 pints of Kilt Lifter, Wow, Hazy, and Hop Knot. Make sure you guys check out at Four Peaks Brew or at Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest at Arizona's hometown brewery. You do have to be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and we ask that you drink responsibly. Okay. So there are two players or two reports of players that we're going to discuss. We'll start with Fred Van Vleet. He declined his player option. And that means everyone on Suns Twitter is asking the question, how do we get Fred Van Vleet here in Phoenix? For one, I have a problem because I'm going to never be able to say his name correctly.
Fred Van Vleet.
Every time I say it, I screw it up.
FV squared.
Exactly. We're going to have to come up with a nickname if he winds up here. Mm-hmm. But what do you guys think?
No.
Is there in a world of possibility here?
Yes. If you had a time machine, you'd go back and draft Fred Van Vleet. It is not happening. There is no money to sign him. You can't sign and trade because you'll get hard capped. There is no path to Fred Van Vleet. Just knock it off already with Fred Van Vleet. I mean, plus he's 29 and it ain't that good.
You can, well, he's pretty good. You can hard cap, But yeah, that puts you in an even more difficult situation than we're already talking about. So no, it doesn't feel realistic at all. There would have to be a lot of maneuvering on his part, on the Suns' part, and on the Raptors' part to make that happen. So as much as he is the best available point guard this offseason, that's realistic that the Suns could get, I just don't see that happening.
Not a chance, unless you want actual Raptors to emerge from the ground.
That'd be
I
kind
mean,
of cool.
I wouldn't be mad at that either.
That would not be cool. What are you talking
Yo,
about?
Do I
We
have
were
Chris?
here.
Do I have Chris Pratt with me? Can he train them?
I'm
How
not
does
going
this
to
work?
take.
How
We're
many
already an
Raptors
hour
are
into this. I
emerging
can't
from
take us down a rabbit
Raptors?
hole. But remind me to tell you the Raptor story later, okay? All right.
Okay.
And then we also, of course, last week, there was a lot of talk around Portland being interested in DeAndre Ayton. Could we get Damian Lillard? Well, Emma, what happened?
Forget about it.
The Reaper reaped. Gambo tweeted out, the Portland Trailblazers are not interested in acquiring DeAndre Ayton. Womp womp.
I mean, we said this. I said this. This is not
Surprise!
surprising.
We were never getting the third pick for DeAndre.
No, we were never getting Damian Lillard for DeAndre Ayton. So glad we can put that stuff to
I'm
bed.
not going to say that.
We just wanted to leave the door open. Just leave
Dreaming's
the door
free.
open.
It's stupid, but it's free.
Yeah.
Let us have our dreams. So there's that.
Well, they're
At
dashed.
least
That's-
the
those
Reaper's
are our thoughts on
back.
Did you
those
enjoy
two.
that 1 week dream?
Hate to break it to you, but no fun around here in this PHNX Suns world, apparently.
We just want people to have realistic expectations.
Yeah, we
That's
just
it.
want to
about
have
it.
some fun. Okay. Next, before we move on to the next one, Saul, we did get an update about
I know. I'm going to read
Basketball Cthulhu.
it. Here we go.
Mhm.
You misunderstand. We are the seal. We are heartbroken by design. The Suns at Cthulhu's prison, and only a championship will break his seal, and the Beeble gods will fall. We're stuck together.
If that doesn't describe what being a Suns fan is like, I don't know what else does.
Thank you, Psycho Blue, for the super chat.
You don't understand the dark. You were merely you merely adopted it. I was born in it, molded by it. Screw you, Basketball Cthulhu.
Is there a way that we could get on another timeline where that's not
God,
the life we have to live? Can we jump timelines or something here where Suns are just in a much better spot?
Why do I feel like every timeline would just line up like this?
I don't know. This could be the worst time.
Shoot. All right, let's do a little bit of coaching updates and shenanigans. We heard from Frank Vogel, and let's play it and then talk about it.
Yeah, I think he's got a great opportunity to win a championship. I know he's very motivated by that, and I'm very motivated to be the guy that helps him get there. I'm very interested in coaching Chris and Chris being back with us. I've communicated that to him. There's just an intangible piece that you cannot overlook when you're talking about a guy like Chris Paul, right? Just the toughness, the IQ, the intelligence of just dissecting and understanding. There's certain guys in this league, they just have a feel of knowing whatever, being able to dissect a game and understand what's happening within that game and figure out what chess pieces to move to get that win. He's an ultimate winner, and I think he's a vital part in what we do next year.
So this is kind of similar to when he was asked about Ayton. I feel like it's nice and it's good to hear the coach wants him around, but ultimately that decision is not in his hands. And what else is he going to say in that scenario? He's not going to say, well, I've never really been that big of a fan, so I kind of feel like we should wave and stretch him, and here's what. He's never going to do that. It's good that if Chris Paul is here, he's got a coach who has a fan in him, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's suddenly off limits or that he's coming back.
I'm going to put the tinfoil hat on, right?
Okay.
This feels like Frank Vogel putting the used car salesman thing on, hey, I know you came down here for the BMW, but can I interest you in this Dodge Caravan that doesn't have a whole lot of miles? It'll get you where you're going. I think you might be interested in it. He's selling DeAndre Ayton. He's selling Chris Paul. I give him credit. If James Jones went to him and said, these two guys aren't going to be on the roster, but let's not say anything, he's doing everything to drum up some interest. he's the carnival barker. He's going to come out here and get you what you get people in the door trying to find this.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen how good Kyrie looks in these warm-up videos?
Stop it.
I would just like to think that Frank Vogel is speaking about the players who are currently on this Suns team the way that he should be speaking about players that are on this current Suns team. And until that changes, these are the guys he is going to move forward as if they are going to be on his team next year. Why wouldn't he? Like, if your coach ever came out and said anything remotely opposite of what he said about DA and what he has said about Chris Paul, you got bigger issues. You hired the wrong guy.
You should have just kept Monty Williams at that point.
Right.
Yeah, because allegedly he hated them both anyway.
Because this is exactly what your coach is supposed to say. This
I
is
agree.
exactly what it is.
He did say something interesting after this on the same show where he was talking about, if Chris came back. The question was, if Chris came back, how would you kind of limit those minutes? How would you make sure he stays healthy at his age? But he talked about how maybe not going as hard in practice physically, but going hard mentally, film-wise, walkthrough-wise, these different things is an approach they might take. And I found that fascinating. It might also be part of why KD and Book found some of this intriguing too with him is, this guy is going to figure out ways to maybe not push us as hard in practice, but get us better in other ways. I found that interesting. And then he talked about how he had spoken with KD and Book and that they're excited about the defensive end of things and how they ran stuff in LA and how they might be able to get the most out of it on the defensive end. So Frank Vogel's bringing a different approach. We'll see if it works, though.
All right, a couple more updates as far as the coaching staff goes. It is rumored that Monty will be stealing Jarrett Jack away from the Suns and bringing him to join his squad over in Detroit. And then that Quentin Crawford is expected to join Frank Vogel's staff. Quentin Crawford coming from the Dallas Mavericks.
Also, former Wildcat. Let's go.
Shut up, Saul. Don't even.
He didn't play for them. What? He was on the bench.
Literally
Bench.
before
He was a
this show,
walk-on.
we
No
had a
minutes.
meeting to talk about this guy, and I brought up that he played for U of A, and Saul didn't know
He
who
was
he
a
was.
walk-on.
Yeah,
He didn't play
but
Are
you
you a
got
diehard fan or aren't
sassy
you?
about it.
because he wasn't a real player.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, he
Saul's
was
a
a walk-on
casual.
at U of A. He's mostly been a video coordinator, but he has worked with Frank Vogel. He spent 2 years under Vogel with the Orlando Magic, and then he was on the Lakers staff the year that they won the title together as an assistant there. So a lot of familiarity there. He's only 32 years old and has played and coached at various levels. So we'll find out more about him, but that's just kind of a broad strokes of what to expect if this reported hire becomes official here soon.
I'm just going to say this, pure speculation. I'm guessing they did not offer Jarrett Jack an opportunity to come back because I'm not looking at Detroit and Phoenix and going, Detroit. Yeah, I'm going to Detroit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was not let go, but he was
Not invited back.
He was not going to be coming back, and Monty invited him. So, yeah,
I like Jared Jack, though.
I did
He
too.
was really nice.
Jared Jack is Chris Paul's boy, though.
Yes, he is.
Mm.
I don't think that means what.
Connect the
Don't-
dots.
Oh,
No.
Chris Paul to Detroit. Trade him. Let's go.
Those are two
God.
dots on separate
God.
sides of the country. I need to connect those.
Gerald's like, please don't do this to me. We
Oh,
are
we can
so
6
close to
degrees
the
of
end.
separation
Please
in this
don't do
bitch
this
all
to
the
me.
way
How
down. Let's
dirty
go.
would you be doing CP3 if you're like, we know you want to play for a championship, but here's Detroit. Enjoy.
You can help turn that franchise around.
Oh.
19 wins, you say? Nope. 29 now.
Oh, boy.
He did it for
Espo.
OKC, though. He got him to the playoffs.
Mhm. You did.
Espo, you're up.
Oh, well,
It's your time to shine, buddy.
you
go.
should have given me kind of a warning before we went
it all
in.
you
The
got.
warning was when I told you before the
Warning
show.
was, Espo, you're up.
You never told me what it was. God, now my phone's not working.
It's
All
in
right.
the rundown.
Well, guess what we're talking about today?
Clippers.
Not those from LA, the kind that go downstairs. That's right. We're talking about ball clippers from your friends at who are they?
Manscaped.
That's right.
Who are they?
I'm just screwing around here. The Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 is my preferred trimmer. I've tried others, and this stuff isn't gentle. But you know what? The Lawnmower 4.0, chef's kiss. It's that good. It could shave fuzz off a peach. Maybe I'll bring in a peach next time in my lawnmower 4.0. We can
please no demonstration.
Yeah, I'll pass.
How nice how nice it is there. But it's not just that. You know what they also have, guys? They have the crop preserver, the ball deodorant that will make your boys not smell. How spectacular is that? And it'll help you stay cool in the heat, which is impressive that you could do that in Arizona. I love that I'm just staring at Gerald now.
I can't get out of this 2-shot soon enough.
Poor Gerald.
No, I'm just going to. Gerald, you know what else you can get?
What's that?
2 free gifts with their Performance Package 4.0. And you're going to get those boxers.
Okay.
And you're going to get a travel bag.
Oh, nice.
That's not a euphemism for downstairs, all right? You're going to get an actual bag. So make sure to get 20% off and free shipping when you use the code PHNX, emphasis on the P, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code PHNX at manscaped.com. Oh, my God. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
That's how you know Espo waited to the last minute to read what he was supposed to say. That one caught you off guard, huh?
I just really didn't expect it. Smooth sack summer, boys.
Well, you know, to be fair, a lot of guys out there don't understand that if you don't keep it clean in terms of the hair, then that's where all the funk starts to come from. It's true.
That's why you have the ball.
That's why you need the
deodorant,
Manscaped. You got to cut all the hair off.
Moving on.
Keep it fresh and hygienic.
Game Time is the
Did I say
place to
something
go
wrong?
for tickets to upcoming games or concerts that you want to go to. Game Time is the best place for last-minute ticket deals. You can snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. If you download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX when you sign up, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, just create an account, redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is super dope because it's so easy to use.
Cardinals preseason tickets, Espo found
First 2 games.
$3 a ticket.
$3 a
So you
ticket?
literally could download the promo and probably take your whole family and save yourself $20 and still only pay like $2.
I mean, my goodness.
There's no better way to. Never mind.
Lord, don't go there.
Don't.
But yeah, check out Game Time. Okay, we do have a super chat from Khalil. Thank you for your super chat. They said, trade Ayton and Shamet to Indiana for Turner and Hield. Re-sign Chris Paul at a cheap price. Point guard starter, either Van Vleet or Caruso. Also try to pry Rui.
Well, you had me until you got to re-sign CP3 at a cheaper rate, and everything after that, that's just impossible. That's none of that's going to happen.
We literally don't have the money.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Like, that's what makes all of this so difficult. And the thing is that, like, especially with all the CBA rule changes and everything, which we all don't have even like full access to all the details. I think we're starting to get more and more. I think somebody put one in the Discord that had a pretty good explanation of it today, which if you're not a diehard, you can become a diehard and get access to that
I know
Discord.
what you're waiting for.
But there's just so many numbers and figures and rules and regulations and things of that nature that go around this that it's not as simple as that.
No,
It just isn't.
This isn't fantasy basketball, and this is no disrespect to the commenter, but there are so many rules and restrictions in place that you can't just go get whoever. This isn't baseball where there's no restrictions. There is no cap you can spend. This is very prescriptive to prevent teams from being able to do that. So James Jones, as we've talked about, has a whole hell of a lot that he has to accomplish with very few tools to do it. He's going to have to MacGyver the shit out of this to get a roster that can get you to a championship.
All right. Do you guys think, I know, Saul, you already went on a rant about the Nuggets, but do you think season comes to an end
I will say
this
yes.
evening?
I think. Listen, I will be frank. I think it's really cool for the DNVR Nuggets crew that they get to experience a championship because they've invested as much into that team as we have the Suns. Good for them. I'm not going to say shout out to DNVR Sports because they've won championships all over the place up in that city. the Broncos, the Avs, like they've seen success before, so whatever. And then the rest of the Nuggets fans, whatever. So I hope they enjoy it. I hope they actually, to be real, I hope they actually take the time to soak it in and really appreciate what they just saw, because they have a great basketball team. They're phenomenal. They got one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA, playing at an incredible level, doing things that we've never seen before. I just hope that they appreciate that in the moment instead of fueling that anger that's deep-seated inside them to go look for vengeance somewhere else. Like, just enjoy the moment. Drink the champagne. Get drunk. Get crazy tonight.
So if the Nuggets win tonight, which I expect they will, this becomes the 15th time in Suns history that they lost in the playoffs to the eventual champion. Good for Denver. Happy for the DNVR folks. But I am so sick of watching this team in this city be the bridesmaid and never the bride and having to deal with this. The Suns and James Jones need to figure out a way to put together a roster that is reflective of what we've seen in Miami, what we see in Denver, the kind of move we saw Denver make last week. They're in the middle of the finals, and they're still making moves to put themselves in a better position to get cheap talent through the draft to stay towards the top. I do not want to be in this position again. 15 times losing to the eventual champion and still no title here. One of the longest droughts in sports. Figure it out, look around, and build a team the right way, because never again should we lose like that to the eventual champ.
Fingers crossed one day it happens for us within our lifetime, preferably, right?
Let's go Miami. Come back from 3-1 down. Let's make it only 14 still. Oh, boy.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you. Before we say goodbye, do you guys want to hear the thing that I was going to tell you about Raptors?
Sure.
I wanted to do it at the end, so if you didn't want to hear about the shenanigans, you could just tune out now.
Oh, that's always great. When you say, this isn't good enough for you to still listen.
I think it's fascinating, but, it's complete and utter shenanigans. Somebody on the internet said that raptors were actually the size of chickens. They weren't like what we see in the movies and all that kind of stuff around dinosaurs, like Jurassic Park, and they were like the big scary raptors that like eat everybody.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
actually the size of chickens. And I love that.
That's fake.
No.
That is my favorite thing in the entire world. A raptor, but it's the size of a chicken. Are you kidding me?
That shit scares me more.
Oh, I
think that
love
scares
it
me more.
so much.
Because
that scares me more.
They could be flocks of them that are just coming at you with little claws.
But I love,
No.
could you imagine if you could
No.
befriend some of those?
You're not
Lindsey, what
befriending a
world are you
raptor.
living in?
People freak out if there's like a
fantasy world.
mouse that runs by.
Yeah,
like,
you
imagine
included.
bigger, but a fucking
Don't you hate
raptor now.
cockroaches?
Yeah, but roaches are totally different. A chicken-sized raptor would be cool.
You can step on a cockroach and kill it. You ain't stepping on that and killing it. It's killing you.
Are we really just going to glaze past the fact that Gerald just said people are afraid of mice and stuff? You were one of them on camera.
No.
That's a rat. This is
true.
different.
This is
But that's
true.
my point. You're backing up my point. People are scared of mice.
Could you
That's still
imagine a
fucking
raptor
true.
hiding in your bag? Holy crap.
No.
It would be cool. I think it would
Like,
be
damn, they left a
fun.
window open. A chicken-sized raptor snuck into my bag.
The claw. Ah,
What the hell
no.
graphic was that?
She was pulling it up on the
It was
internet
a
so you
raptor
could
crapping
see
at a chicken.
that
See?
it's similar size.
Which came first, the raptor or the...
It's a mega chicken.
I don't...
Depends.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I think it's cool, but
It's terrifying.
That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
No.
That makes them worse.
I think it makes them better.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it. There's the shenanigans. You're welcome. Happy Monday, everybody. Come back and see us tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a trade machine for you. Maybe we won't.
No,
I don't
we
know.
will.
It just
We
depends on
will.
how I feel when I wake up tomorrow.
It's not up to Lindsey. We're doing it.
Oh, boy.
It's happening.
God, Saul, you could at least let me pretend for
No.
5 seconds?
No.
You guys are so lame.
We will
Give
not.
the people what they want.
No
Exactly.
chickens, no raptors, no pretend things, no fun, the two of you. Maybe they'll be better tomorrow, but I can't promise you that. But plan to meet us back here at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Until then, you can follow the show on Twitter at PHNX_Suns. You can follow me at Lindsey Smith AZ. You can follow Saul at Saul_Bookman. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget. And of course, you can follow Espo at Espo. Espo, take us home.
What's scarier? A chicken-sized raptor or raptor-sized chicken. Screw you, basketball Cthulhu. Ahoy, hoy.
PHNX though, Lindsey, Gerald, Espo. Saul pass the ball, we here to turn up the tempo. Got to understand me, I'll always rep the family. Rally in the valley like Dan G, no plan B, always on the job.